Hey, Jeremy.
Jeremy, TV show. Jeremy TV.
Mitch,
Cameras.
you know that every time a new issue of Morning Glories comes out, I have to reread the entire series to catch all the mind-blowing moments. We're up to 27 issues with a lot of pages.
And you know that every Friday we gotta shoot a TV show.
Just go. It's fine. Just go ahead and do it anyway. Just
No, you
ignore
haven't been
me.
paying attention.
Pretend I'm not here. We'll get it in post.
You have a segment.
We'll get it in post.
Hi, guys. Welcome to Nerdcast. My name is Jess.
And her name is Jess. And this is Nerdcast.
To the Batmobile. Let's go.
Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
Roger. Ready to move out.
Hey, welcome to Nerdcast. This week we have tons of news for you, including Cats, EA, Nintendo, and a gorgeous, gorgeous new piece of hardware.
Plus, I review Epic, Donkey Kong Country Returns 3D, and we get to see Jeremy Lawton totally nerd out on Comic Crash, which we're betting is at least moderately entertaining.
Definitely, at least moderately entertaining.
A smidgen. This is Nerdcast.
Yes. So apparently memes are movies now. Ta-da! Everyone's favorite hateful feline, Grumpy Cat, is getting his own movie, Garfield style. It will be a full 90-minute flick, but I'm not sure I'm ready to spend my money on this. A Grumpy Cat movie is either the greatest or worst idea ever. I can't quite tell yet. Gmail's new update auto-organizes your mail. The idea is it takes things like social media sites, ads, newsletters, and real living people using an email into their own tabs. You can look at this later on your own time, but you actually have to switch tabs to view them. It should make your inbox look at least a little less cluttered. You can help us test out this lovely new look by emailing us your questions, comments, indie artwork to nerdcastlaurel@gmail.com. Nintendo has released their list of playable E3 demo Best Buy locations. Unfortunately, there aren't as many as I would have hoped. I've seen people on Twitter complaining that the closest store to them is a good 6 hours away. To drive that far and then wait another hour or two to actually play a game, is it worth it? What originally sounded like a cool fan-geared idea has turned into somewhat of a debacle. At least we have the E3 Nintendo Direct to look forward to.
I'm worried about the people who make kids' movies. Remember Up? An old man with nothing left in his life finds a way to be happy again thanks to a spunky, chunky version of Short Round. How'd that movie start? Was it a 10-minute heart-wrench montage about Carl's dead wife? Yes, it was exactly that. How about Ice Age? Mandy the Mammoth refuses to trust other talking prehistoric mammals. Remember how his wife is portrayed as a cave painting about a female mammoth being brutally caveman murdered? Well, Chris Wedge, the same director of Ice Age, not Up, I just wanted 2 examples, has now given us Epic, the story of children preferring to watch Fast and Furious 6, but also the story of a teenage girl and her father dealing with the death of mom and wife, respectively. And then it gets darker. Despite the fact that Epic has a candy-coated crust, the movie is expressly about grieving. Every major character is coping with the death of a lover or family member, even the big bad, whose son is killed on screen. Every character's every action is then driven by loss, up to and including Colin Farrell's stoic guard captain character, who may or may not be suicidal going into the final act. Shame on everyone who said that this movie was another Fern Gully knockoff. This movie is not an environmental PSA. It doesn't even talk about pollution. The villain's magic power is decay, because the movie's about death. So I had fun, but I love overanalyzing film. It makes me smile to know that every single character in a children's movie has a ghost hanging over them. But don't worry. Parents, kids aren't gonna notice that. The kids, like myself, are gonna be drawn in by the flashes of actually quite well done fantasy violence and the extremely well done CGI. There's a score by Danny Elfman hidden in there somewhere, but I can't remember a note of it. Also not worth mentioning is the plot. Just because Epic's not ripping off Fern Gully doesn't mean it's not ripping off Lord of the Rings with a CGI Fern Gully cast. You've seen this before. Characters have to protect the magic MacGuffin to save the magic forest. Meanwhile, their adventures solve their interpersonal problems, and the age-appropriate characters get to kiss at the end. So take your kids if they're not old enough for exploding cars, or if your family just lost someone and you're looking for a movie to explain the horrors of reality so you don't have to do it. And can someone please go be Chris Wedge's friend? Please, in case these movies are cries for help.
Double Fine, you remember them. They made games such as Costume Quest and Stacking, as well as a more recent game we're not going to discuss. But you may remember them instead from their massive Kickstarter they had about a year ago for a game called Broken Age. Only a third of their team is working on that project. But now they have a different Kickstarter up. You can check out Massive Chalice, which is a little bit more ambitious in their asking price, by going to our Facebook page and clicking the link. So what's the big idea? Why do they need more money just because there's another studio working on it? Well, they want to remain an independent studio so that they can bring the game and the fans exactly what they want. Visit their Kickstarter and decide for yourself. In other Kickstarter news, A Hat in Time reached its goal of $30,000 as of May 30th, with only 28 days to spare. They took a lot of their inspiration from the old Nintendo 64 days. Check them out. They're also looking to be greenlit on Steam, so even if you don't want to donate, go to Steam and greenlight them. Just remember, if you like the Fat Cat Kickstarter we presented a couple weeks ago, there's only a few days to pledge for that one as well. EA has started to make good on its promise to do away with online passes. Several have already been reduced to the price of free, but only on Xbox Live. It's unknown if this is permanent or not. So you have to use a game that requires one, you might as well go grab it while you can. Are you a fan of the Tales series? Well, I've got some good news for you. While the collector's edition of Tales of Xillia pre-order, a limited edition, will be available in North America. It comes with a character book, a CD, 2 discs, DLC costumes, a special case, and it will only cost you $60. All this can be yours if you pre-order it before it's released on August 6th.
Donkey Kong Country Returns 3D is a port of a game from the same name that came out for the Wii whenever ago, and it's a perfect example of how game developers think trial and error is a stand-in for genuine difficulty. I haven't been this frustrated by a game in a long time. The next time someone tells me that video games lead children to violence, I now have to edit my official response to, "That's absolutely not true," unless they're playing Donkey Kong Country Returns 3D, in which case they're probably bludgeoning some forest creatures right now and learning to pull the teeth from dead bodies. For those of you who don't know, DKCR 3D is a platforming game. Your goal is to take a gorilla and move him from left to right by jumping on, jumping over, or smashing things. Pretty simple, until someone at Nintendo decided that the game would be even better if it weren't fun. You see, the game is only a platforming game. It's not some hybrid adventure game that contains jumping sections like most games. It's just an obstacle course. So how do you make that difficult? Asked Nintendo with deadness in their hearts. They answered by making a game about merciless precision jumping. Obstacles are placed off-screen, enemy hitboxes are inconsistent, and DK occasionally decides that he needs to slide to his death instead of coming to a complete stop. It's mind-numbing how often a strange mistake could send Donkey Kong to his instantaneous death. I died because I stood up too soon. I died because I was going too fast. I died because I was going too slow. Beating a level just once requires the player to memorize each obstacle as they go and repeat each maneuver the same way each time after they die, because you're going to die. Because the levels are just trial and error. My personal favorite annoyance were the enemies that were placed in such a way that when you jumped on them, you were sent on a jump arc to your death. This wasn't all enemies or even most of them, but every now and then I'd jump on an enemy and there'd just be no platform to land on going forward. I just careen to my death and start over. So apparently that was the developers telling me, "No, idiot, you don't jump on that one. Why would you jump on that one? Play our level right." And you just sort of have to do that. You have to play each level over and over until you remember all the tricks. Then if that wasn't fun enough, and it's not, you get to play the level again to find all the hidden doodads. Then, if you want to memorize it again, you can try to play through all of that as quickly as possible in time trial mode. Congratulations, you just cleared the first level. If the game wasn't on a handheld console, no one would have seen you for days. I was playing on the easier, new difficulty setting with more health and items, none of which make the game any more bearable. Tell me, What's the difference between an item that saves you from instant death and an item that brings you back to life? Pointlessness. So, just like East Berlin, this is not a country you want to return to, because once you're there, you'll spend all your time trying to get out. Run to the right, jump hard, run hard, and turn that run down to a hobbling jog. And pass on this game, please.
Had enough news yet? It's time for our wonderful minion, Jeremy, to bring you Comic Crash.
Steve Holt!
Welcome to Comic Crash. I'm Jeremy Lawton, and I was about to cry for the first time in 60 years. I remember the last time, hiding under my mother's deck in a thunderstorm, and found the remains of my... Anyways, this is Comic Crash. Did I say that already? Probably. News first, then reviews. 2 weeks ago marked the end of an era, as Geoff Johns' nearly decade-long Green Lantern run came to an end with the New 52's Green Lantern number 20, a massively oversized $8 issue that concluded the Wrath of the First Lantern crossover. The issue itself was a spectacular masterpiece, tying together everything from across Geoff Johns' 9 years or so of storytelling, creating send-offs for all the major characters, and also giving us the biggest status quo change in the Green Lantern Corps since Emerald Twilight. If you haven't heard by now, the Guardians of the Universe have been killed by Sinestro and Atrocitus. The future of the Corps actually looks brighter, with less fascist and emotionally stunted leadership on the horizon. DC has also released the trailer for the next animated film, Justice League, The Flashpoint Paradox. While certain themes seem to be repeated from the Flashpoint event story, the overall sense of the trailer suggests a very different one. Let's certainly hope they at least change that awful ending. And Kevin Conroy will be Batman again, but only for the scenes in the regular universe, which is a minimal part of Flashpoint, but it's still Kevin Conroy as Batman. There's nothing bad about that. Speaking of animation, Marvel has a new animated series in the works, Hulk and the Agents of Smash. That's S-M-A-S-H. Set to begin on Disney XD August 11th. The series will star Hulk alongside fellow Hulks, Red Hulk, She-Hulk, Scar, his son from outer space, and A-Bomb, who somebody else who was basically a Hulk. Former Batman the Animated Series and Arkham City writer Paul Dini is confirmed to be aboard the project, but all I can say for now is that there's definitely going to be a lot of muscles and smashing. The final official box art for the Deadpool video game has been released, confirming Cable, Rogue, Domino, Psylocke, and Wolverine as guest stars. Deadpool himself released an official statement expressing displeasure at Wolverine appearing in, quote, yet another thing he doesn't belong in. Deadpool, the game, will be available for Xbox 360, PS3, and PC June 25th. This was a light week for releases, being a rare 5th Wednesday, mostly consisting of DC annuals and a few Marvel stragglers. Interestingly enough, there were quite a few first issues of stuff last week. Catwoman Annual number 1. Ann Nocenti and Christian Duce's Catwoman Annual was a bit of a pleasant surprise. I mean, it wasn't like it was actually good, but honestly, it wasn't utterly atrocious like most of Nocenti's Catwoman issues. The pacing didn't swing wildly so much to jar your brain, but there were a ton of really dumb plot elements. Catwoman's drone missile redirection gun, which is stupid enough on its own, didn't work because the safety was on. And the characters were either badly written or completely moronic. Since when was Penguin obsessed with gadgets? Why are all the cops so horrible at police work? Bullock was good. Bullock was really well written and a good cop, but he was the only one. And while the pacing wasn't horrendous, there were still a lot of problems with the overall plotting. So many random extraneous elements, like that black ice pops that seemed completely unrelated to anything, and a callback to the dropped element from the previous Catwoman issue that was still pretty much ignored. I'm giving this one mildly surprised 2 out of 5. Better than most of the recent ones, but Batman the Dark Knight Annual number 1 was a very interesting and well-written issue. Szymon Kudranski's, which is a really weird name, very confusing artwork played to its advantage, striking an absolutely perfect horror movie tone, even with the 3 Batman villains as its protagonists. Hurwitz has proven he knows these characters well from his Pain and Prejudice miniseries and the recent arcs of Batman the Dark Knight, and he flaunts that knowledge here well. It's a fairly psychological tale of terror that's extremely entertaining in the telling, but the problem lies with the end, the way everything isn't really wrapped up at all. They spend the whole issue convinced that Batman has set a house full of traps and is waiting to strike, and while waiting for a twist, the end simply reveals that it was mostly true, but Batman just set up the meeting and let them drive themselves crazy. that some of the events felt too precise to be unplanned. The ending was a letdown, and it deflated some of the great tension the issue had built up, but the overall experience is still a good one. I'm going to go 3.5 out of 5. The new digital-first series, Adventures of Superman, is a counterpart to the unbound by continuity Legends of the Dark Knight. Like many issues of Legends of the Dark Knight, the first issue of Adventures of Superman has 3 different 10-page stories by different creative teams. Violent Minds by Jeff Parker and Chris Samney is a fairly interesting and somewhat straightforward Superman tale. There's nothing wrong with it, and overall it's actually really well told, but the big kicker is the dark ending with perfect characterization of Lex Luthor. Jeff Lemire's Fortress has some ugly but effective artwork, a fairly generic kind of short story, balancing kids playing Superman with visuals of actual adventures. The issue ends strong with Justin Jordan and Riley Rosmo's Bizarro's Worst Day. Rosmo's artwork is absolutely phenomenal, just chock full of energy, and the story is both entertaining and emotional in a really strange way. It makes you care about Bizarro. Overall, these 3 tales demonstrate the series has as much potential as Legends of the Dark Knight, and it would be a good series for people to get into Superman. And the first issue, I'm going to go 4.5 out of 5. Marvel's newest relaunch is finally the subtitle-less X-Men. We've had X-Men Legacy, Uncanny X-Men, All New X-Men, 2 X-Forces, a couple others I'm probably forgetting, Uncanny Avengers. But this one focuses entirely on the women of the X-Men, which I think is kind of ironic. But I'm incredibly impressed with how natural it feels. While reading the story, I'm not aware that the series focuses intentionally on the girls. It just feels like that who is happening around. Brian Wood's also penning a really compelling and truly touching story with Jubilee and her orphan baby. And the pacing is much smoother than his Ultimate X-Men work. Oliver Coipel's artwork is truly gorgeous, with an equal sense of smoothness that fits the writing like a glove. The facial expressions especially are very strong. Marvel's always got a lot of X-books on the market, but this one's definitely looking to be a buy. If you're a little hesitant about an all-girl team feeling force, set your worries aside, because you'll barely notice that it's meant to be that. X-Men #1 is off to a great start with a 5 out of 5 right out of the gate. New Avengers #6. It's odd that the most action-packed issue of New Avengers wasn't quite one of the best. Jonathan Hickman and Steve Epting's Illuminati-based series strives in dialogue, characterization, and complex morality, with the threat on a scale that defies comprehension. Against all odds, this issue managed to raise the stakes even higher than the death of everything in the multiverse was already the stakes. This issue also weaved more subplots into the larger narrative, setting up things beyond simply the incursions. But it was a dark day for the Illuminati nonetheless. This issue felt a bit rushed, and it was a bit difficult to follow the explanation of the map makers and how they're more of a threat than regular incursions in Raubam al-Al, but overall it was still an intense and morally driven issue, with the highest stakes and a team that actively avoids action in favor of more important causes. New Avengers #6 still gets a 4.5 out of 5. The Wake #1. Scott Snyder truly is one of the best in the business. In addition to his God-class Batman run, his Vertigo work is excellent and very unique. The Wake, with artist Sean Murphy, is the latest Scott Snyder work. Like his others, dark, atmospheric, and cinematic. The Wake already feels like a horror movie perfectly transformed into a comic. The tension is high from the start, even with very little actually happening. Snyder wastes no time in introducing the cast, and they really feel like a rounded movie cast, with a disgraced scientist's divorced mother and a group of well-rounded individuals all gathered for a scientific experience like no other, with their own quirks and specialties. But to separate it from a typical horror movie is the book-ending scenes, one in the future and one in the distant past. It's a solid horror movie going on in the middle, but around it is a candy coating of something beyond. This series shows a lot of promise. This first issue is still just the intro. I'm only going 4 out of 5 now, but with high potential for perfect scores in the future. John Layman and Rob Guillory's Chew #34 is perhaps the best gimmick cover ever. The issue comes with all 3 mismatched images and begs you to cut them up so you can reconnect the faces of Tony, Mason, and the vampire as you wish. I'm honestly tempted to buy a second copy just to do that. Pretty much every issue of Chew is perfect. This one's only faulted for being a bit more about very vague setup on Savoy's front. The other part of the issue with Tony and the vampire was an unmistakably intense portion for a series so heavily comedic. But Chew has always maintained that tenuous balance perfectly, especially more so with the heart-wrenching halfway point of #30. I choke up whenever I even look at the cover. Even when it isn't the best issue, Chew is perfect, always. Seriously, go buy all the series thus far. It has a setup that appears formulaic, but has some of the most precise and brilliantly weaved plotting in the industry. First 5 collections are out, and if you get those, you only need 31 onwards to be caught up, so do it. I've yet to give an issue of Chew anything but a perfect score, and this one's no exception. But everything I said about Chew, it's brilliant. Go buy it right now. It goes double, nay, triple for Morning Glories. Morning Glories is, hands down, the greatest comic I've read in my life. Nick Spencer has beautifully mastered the art of tease writing, giving you just enough to keep things mysterious without getting frustrating. Every issue is chock full of mind-blowing mind screws, and the latest few issues have ratcheted things up even more. I've had to give above and beyond scores of 6 out of 5 to the past 2 issues to properly convey just how much better than the other already perfect issues were. This issue is just like those two. Amazingly enough, this issue probably gives us more answers than any issue thus far, but in a very vague manner, keeping much of the mysterious atmosphere intact. There's also a few extras, an analysis excerpt written from a Morning Glories fan site, and an adorable and weirdly accurate chibi recap of the entire first season by Matthew Malikana, I don't know how to say that name, and Andrea Pendiel, I don't know how to say that name either. Don't get me wrong, Morning Glories is a series for readers who want to be challenged by a comic. And you will find no greater challenge and masterpiece than Morning Glories. Lately, it's managed to do the impossible and get even better. I might need to create a whole different scale standard to hold the series to. Otherwise, I'm just going to be stuck handing out technically impossible 6 out of 5s like I just did. Go buy Morning Glories now. The first collection's got like technically 7 issues because the first issue is double length and it's only $10. And even the other ones are fairly cheap. Just do it. It's the best thing ever. That's all I got.
Do you like things from the future? Well, here's Nerd Gear.
Don't forget, both The Legend of Zelda Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons are available this week on the 3DS eShop. They're only $5 each until June 20th. Speaking of Nintendo sales, Newegg has a pre-order sale on Mario & Luigi Dream Team until June 3rd. It's only a difference of $6, but who wants to pay $40 for a DS game anyway? Even if it is 3D. Come on, Nintendo.
Can't get enough Star Wars? Well, now it's on the mystical item known as your iPad. Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic is now available on the iPad for $10. It's not a direct port either. They specifically adapted the controls to the terrible touchscreen.
Razer has introduced a super thin gaming laptop. Welcoming a razor blade that won't get you in trouble, this new Wonder Machine is slightly smaller than the width of the dime. It's even smaller than a MacBook Air. I know. Scary, right? I'm not going to go over all of the hardware specs, but it is insanely powerful, especially for its size, and it was designed specifically for gaming. Ranging anywhere from $1,800 to $2,300, owning this baby will put you at the envy of every on-the-go gamer that you see. Neat, they see you on TV, you're good. Or you could also get the Razer Blade Pro, which comes with a slightly bigger screen and starts at $2,300 instead. Wow, but it is gorgeous. Seriously, you have to go look at it.
So, you may have noticed I screamed the name Steve Holt earlier.
Steve Holt!
Like that. I was just expanding on a series of inside jokes from one of my favorite series, Arrested Development, Season 4 of which just dropped on Netflix as the second ever Netflix exclusive series. We, here at Table Talk at Nerdcast, are going to be talking all about Season 4, what makes it great, how it improves on the original, and other things that we really like about the show. Come join us. Come on. It's over. You don't have to move. It's over here.
Yeah, we'll bring it to you. Don't
Keep
worry.
watching.
You're fine.
Jump cut.
Steve Holt! This is Table Talk. Tonight's topic is Season 4 of Arrested Development. What do you have to say about it, Mitch? You brought the whole thing, right?
Beatrice.
Absolutely loved it. It gets a little more serious for those of you fans who are still remembering the sitcom. They try to go back and take each episode character by character, which changes the dynamic actually quite a bit. You don't have the house to come back to, you don't have the same general plot ideas that you can pick out, but instead it's replaced with an interwoven plot that jumps between each character, and you don't get a full story until you've seen the end of the whole season.
The entire, all 15 episodes of the season really break away from the limitations of television. They actually vary in length from about 30 minutes to 40 minutes because they don't have to worry about commercials. And every single episode takes place essentially along the same 5-year timeline between the cancellation and now. It creates this really beautiful, as Mitch said, interwoven story that just gets even though it's recycling around itself, it's just building and getting better. And the revelations further into the season are more and more mind-blowing because of how much they explain.
What I found really interesting about it was I wasn't as into the beginning of season 4 as I thought I would be. It takes 2 or 3 episodes before you realize what the creators are really doing, unless you're watching the show and we just told you the trick. So it's worth sludging through that first episode till you get the feeling that you understand what's going on, and then it just starts to blow your mind. It's really clever writing.
Another thing is, like the recent Netflix original programming, it's all released at once, and it feels like it was written with the intention to watch the entire season in one sitting, because of the way it loops around itself, and just it really breaks away from the limitations the original series had, and frees up its plot elements a lot more. They're not tied down to the Bluth Development Company. Everyone is much more out there and on their own in these, much more open-ended plot lines that are moving around. It's just, yeah.
At the same time, I like how they do a lot of kickbacks to the previous seasons, like the stair car, and it being too high, so he got a smaller car that was still managed to be too high, and just little things like that going back and forth. Maybe's wonderful career. So they just really, I like how they do throwbacks to the old season with still showing new life in the season and like a different take on it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of new callback jokes and new takes on some of the old classic comeback jokes. And I will forever be laughing at the phrase Mr. F, even harder than I did at season 3. Season 4, I didn't expect it, and it was amazing. You should go watch it.
They actually minimalized a lot of the repeat jokes in favor of a lot of new ones. It was really surprising. They really avoided using the exact phrase, "I had made a huge mistake," so many times. And it also, like the end of season 3, got really meta, where the last episode of season 3 talked about them making a movie, and there's been a Arrested Development movie on hiatus. This entire season also revolved around Michael talking to series narrator Ron Howard about producing a movie. And I'm not really sure what the intention is to take after that. I don't think Arrested Development has the capacity to fit all of its essence into the limited format of a movie. I think they have to do a 5th season.
I think, well, for one, yes, I think they're definitely making a 5th season because they left the last 2 episodes with huge loose ends. But also, I think that this was a new way for them to do a meta joke. They knew the fans were expecting a movie, wanting a movie, until they heard about the Netflix exclusive. So what better way to explain why we're not getting a movie than showing the audience episode for episode?
Oh, wait, I had something, but, oh, damn.
Don't give up. Don't give up. Be strong.
Mr. F, movie, Michael.
Musical?
Michael. They also, oh yeah, no, that's what it was. Even though they left a lot of big loose ends hanging, like George Sr.'s...
Those are spoilers.
All right, I'll say this. They've left a lot of big loose ends hanging, but there are also a lot of character arcs that kind of came to a surprising closure. George Michael really came out on his own in this season. At the very end, there's just a fantastic sense that George Michael's just completely come around as a character.
We've only got about 2 minutes left, so what do you think about the series sort of collapsing on the idea of having a protagonist anymore? It doesn't seem like, in the first 3 seasons, we knew that Michael was the main character, when he was exclusively the character we were supposed to sympathize with. But we see him, and even George Michael, going down a darker path in this round of episodes. What do you think?
Not only that, well, just to expand on that, I think they really played around a lot with the dynamic of the family as a whole. Joe was always a character that you wanted to feel sorry for. As much of a jerk as he was, you really could see that he had a horrible upbringing that made him into just somebody who desperately wants to please his parents. But this season, it got impossible to really feel sympathetic for Joe anymore because he's pretty much progressed into a complete monster, even though he doesn't totally realize it. Conversely, they had the first moment I can think of in the entire series where there was even a hint of seeing Lucille in any sympathetic light. Lucille 1, who was sometimes Lucille 2 in this season. It was just really invigorating to see them just take the emotions you have about the characters and just fling them in the most extreme directions possible.
All right, and I think we're just about out of time. So for everyone out there listening, we've made a huge mistake, and this has been Table Talk. Guys,
Turn the page.
guys, finish the show. Then you can read the book.
Next week, I'll pull myself out of Morning Glories long enough to talk about the new DC relaunch with the reverse title, Batman Superman, new issue of Ultimate Comics The Ultimates with new writer Joshua Hale Fialkov, former writer of I, Vampire, and new issue of Bedlam, which begins a new arc with a new artist. I'm gonna miss Riley Rossmo.
Mitch will be around to do retro reviews. Not retro as in NES retro, but retro as in it came out this gen and we just weren't around yet. I will be also covering lots of pre-E3 news. It's almost here, can you believe it? Nerdcast is now going back to reading Morning Glories.
E3! Steve Holt!
Okay, ready?
All right, ready,
3,
ready.
2, 1.
Cuckoo-ca-cha!